Stay informed, stay ahead. Subscribe now to USA Fresh News.
Today in USA Fresh News. Good morning, America. Markets open on edge as investors weigh softer economic signals against hopes for relief from the Fed. In Washington, political fights intensify over immigration and funding, while new scrutiny of elite power circles fuels a trust in institutions debate. Overseas, flashpoints multiply and climate extremes keep disrupting daily life. We'll connect the dots, clear, fast, and grounded, right here on USA Fresh News.
So let's see, or listen. America begins its day with a cascade of headlines that reflect optimism, anxiety, and unresolved tensions across markets, politics, and society. The most striking image is Wall Street's exuberance. All three major indexes, the S&P 500, Dow Jones Industrial Average, and NASDAQ, closed at record highs. This surge is powered by investor bets that the Federal Reserve will cut rates in its upcoming meeting. The weak labor data released last week reinforced expectations that policymakers will act sooner rather than later, offering households and businesses some relief from higher borrowing costs. The rally is not just numbers on a screen. For millions of Americans, interest rates determine whether mortgages are affordable, whether car loans can be approved, and whether small businesses can finance expansions. When Wall Street cheers the possibility of a cut, it signals that credit might soon flow more freely. Yet beneath the optimism lies a fragile reality. Revised payroll data expected later this week may reveal that job growth was overstated by as much as 1 million positions. If the correction is sharp, markets could be jolted back into volatility. History reminds us that exuberance built on shaky foundations rarely lasts. Echoes of the dot-com bubble or the housing boom serve as cautionary tales. Washington adds its own layers of tension. Lawmakers reignited the Epstein saga by releasing a handwritten note allegedly signed by former President Donald Trump in Epstein's notorious birthday book. While its significance is debated, the revelation underscores how scandal, whether substantiated or not, erodes public confidence. It touches a nerve in a political culture already marked by cynicism and mistrust. For critics, it is another reminder of elite circles shielding their own. For supporters, it is evidence of political witch hunts. Either way, the story reverberates far beyond courtrooms, shaping how Americans view leadership, accountability, and transparency. At the same time, immigration enforcement surged back into headlines as ICE launched Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago. Dozens of arrests rattled communities, sparking fear among families and reigniting debates about the balance between security and compassion. Supporters of the raids argue that strict enforcement deters criminal networks and preserves rule of law. Opponents counter that aggressive tactics disrupt neighborhoods, discourage cooperation with police, and fracture already vulnerable communities. Businesses in agriculture, hospitality, and construction warn that crackdowns deepen labor shortages, complicating an economy that relies heavily on immigrant workers. Once again, the pendulum swings between enforcement and reform, with human lives caught in the middle. National security made its presence felt through a U.S. Navy operation in the southern Caribbean. American forces intercepted and destroyed a vessel allegedly linked to Venezuela's Tren de Aragua cartel, killing several suspects. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told sailors the mission was not training, but an active interdiction, a phrase chosen to project seriousness. Venezuela condemned the act as a violation of sovereignty, while Washington defended it as necessary to combat organized crime and secure maritime trade. The incident highlights the blurred line between law enforcement and geopolitics, as America continues to project force close to its borders. Overlaying these issues is the growing weight of climate extremes. California faces a marine heat wave, with sea surface temperatures up to 7 degrees above average, threatening fisheries, fueling harmful algal blooms, and unsettling coastal ecosystems. Meanwhile, northern China reports both its longest rainy season since 1961 and its hottest summer on record. These global signals resonate at home: rising food prices, shifting storm patterns, and new vulnerabilities in supply chains. Climate, once framed as tomorrow's problem, is increasingly the story of today. What ties all these developments together is uncertainty. Investors cheer record highs, but fear hidden weaknesses. Political scandals erode trust even when facts remain contested. Immigration raids attempt to enforce security, but risk destabilizing communities. Military operations abroad promise protection, yet raise diplomatic stakes. Climate extremes pile on, shaping costs and livelihoods in ways that feel unavoidable. For everyday Americans, the effect is personal. Mortgage decisions hinge on Fed policy. Trust in government wavers as scandals resurface. Families feel fear or relief, depending on how immigration laws are enforced. Safety and stability are tied to operations far beyond U.S. shores. And dinner tables, from Los Angeles to New York, reflect the costs of disrupted supply chains and shifting weather. The United States has weathered turbulence before, but resilience is not the same as immunity. The question facing the nation is whether adaptation will be fast enough. Can policymakers act before markets stumble? Can institutions rebuild credibility? Can communities balance enforcement with compassion? And can the country respond to climate signals before they become catastrophes? These are not abstract questions. They shape daily choices and define the nation's trajectory. Beneath the day's most immediate headlines lies another layer of stories. Quieter, perhaps, but just as significant in shaping America's future. These narratives may not always command front-page attention, yet they steadily influence the economy, diplomacy, and culture. Energy has become one of the most pressing undercurrents. Across the country, utilities are reporting unprecedented demand as two forces collide: the rapid expansion of artificial intelligence and data centers, and the rising need for air conditioning during hotter summers. A single rack of advanced servers can now consume as much electricity as hundreds of homes, while climate-driven heat pushes households and businesses to rely more heavily on cooling. Together, they create a strain that the nation's aging grid struggles to accommodate. For consumers, this often means higher bills and occasional warnings about brownouts. For policymakers, it revives the urgent question of whether America can modernize its infrastructure quickly enough. Past generations responded to energy strain with bold projects like rural electrification and nuclear investment. Today, the debate centers on renewables, battery storage, and smarter distribution systems. The outcome will shape not just costs, but also national competitiveness. Trade is another area where deeper shifts are underway. The Supreme Court is preparing to decide whether the Trump administration's tariffs exceeded executive authority. If the court rules against the policy, the Treasury may be forced to refund billions of dollars collected in duties. That would be a seismic moment, reshaping how power is divided between Congress and the White House. For businesses, tariffs decide sourcing strategies, price structures, and hiring plans. For households, the effects are less visible, but no less real. Car prices, electronics, and household goods are all influenced by trade policy. A ruling could signal the beginning of a new era in which presidents no longer wield unilateral authority over tariffs, forcing a recalibration of America's global economic leverage. In Silicon Valley, corporate drama carries national weight. Intel, once the titan of semiconductors, is grappling with leadership turmoil after its product's chief stepped down. The company has fallen behind rivals like NVIDIA and TSMC, just as Washington is counting on it to lead the charge toward domestic chip production under the CHIPS Act. Semiconductors power everything from smartphones to defense systems, making them the backbone of the modern economy. If Intel falters, the U.S. risks remaining dependent on overseas supply chains, many located in geopolitically vulnerable regions. The struggle is no longer just about market share. It is about national security, industrial independence, and America's ability to compete in a world where microchips are as strategic as oil once was. Abroad, sanctions remain a critical but complicated tool of U.S. foreign policy. In Europe, allies are working to tighten coordination on measures against Russia, aiming to close loopholes and demonstrate unity as the war in Ukraine drags on. Sanctions have always been wars of attrition. They rarely deliver immediate results, but can, over time, weaken adversaries and shift balances of power. The challenge lies in maintaining consistency. Russia has been adept at finding back channels through Asia and the Middle East. For sanctions to bite, enforcement must be relentless, and patience must hold. For Americans, these measures may feel distant, but they ripple into energy markets, shipping costs, and ultimately the prices at the pump and the grocery store. Closer to home, the military's role in the Caribbean is gaining attention. The recent strike against a cartel-linked vessel underscores the U.S. commitment to confronting organized crime networks before their influence crosses borders. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's declaration that "this is not training" was meant to signal seriousness. For neighbors in Latin America, such actions raise sovereignty concerns. For Americans, the connection is clear. Narcotics, trafficking, and organized crime abroad feed directly into domestic crises. Military operations in the region are not only about projecting power, they are about protecting communities at home. Culture, too, is shifting in ways that shape policy debates. Energy consumption, once the domain of engineers and regulators, is becoming a mainstream issue. Podcasts, media outlets, and public figures are reframing it as a lifestyle question. Is streaming endless content, training AI models, or attending energy-intensive events socially responsible? These cultural conversations matter because they often lead political ones. Recycling, once fringe, became common practice after cultural adoption. Hybrid cars, initially niche, became symbols of responsibility before policy incentives expanded their reach. If energy use becomes a cultural flashpoint, corporations may adapt their practices even faster than lawmakers can pass new regulations. Taken together, these threads highlight the hidden pressures testing American resilience. Energy systems bend under demand. Trade rules face judicial scrutiny. Corporate strategies in Silicon Valley carry implications for national defense. Sanctions challenge unity across oceans. Military actions stir regional debates. Cultural shifts reframe once technical issues as personal choices. Each by itself may seem manageable. Together, they sketch a picture of a nation constantly adapting under stress. For everyday Americans, the connections are tangible. Rising electric bills reflect server farms in distant states. Car prices and appliance costs hinge on rulings in Washington courtrooms. Job stability in the Midwest depends on semiconductor execution in California. Heating bills in the Northeast are influenced by sanctions enforcement in Europe. Community safety in U.S. cities ties back to naval patrols thousands of miles away. What seems distant or abstract often lands directly at the kitchen table. The broader lesson is that today's secondary stories often become tomorrow's breaking news. Energy strain can trigger crises. Tariff disputes can reshape trade. Corporate missteps can weaken national competitiveness. Sanctions can redraw alliances, and cultural conversations can transform into laws. America has a track record of adapting, but resilience is never automatic. It requires attention, investment, and the will to act before cracks widen. This is why complementary stories matter. They reveal the slow-moving shifts that set the stage for dramatic headlines yet to come. They remind us that while today may feel calm on the surface, the undercurrents are already pulling at the systems that keep daily life functioning. And they show that America's strength lies not just in responding to crises, but in anticipating them.
Sports. Sports this week have been brimming with intensity, surprises, and defining moments, both on the field and off. The NFL, Major League Baseball, and college football delivered the kind of storylines that fans live for, games decided in the final moments. roster moves that reshape expectations, and performances that capture the imagination of entire cities. In the NFL, the season's international opener set the tone with fireworks. The Los Angeles Chargers stunned the Kansas City Chiefs in snow polo, pulling off a 27-21 upset that reverberated across the league. Justin Herbert showcased precision and composure, throwing for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Patrick Mahomes struggled to find rhythm despite a late rally. For the Chargers, the victory was a statement of intent, proof that they can compete with the reigning Super Bowl champions. For the Chiefs, it was a humbling reminder that even dynasties can falter when defenses adjust and offensive timing slips. Back in the U.S., the Pittsburgh Steelers made headlines not only for their thrilling 34-32 win over the New York Jets, but also for decisive action in the aftermath. Safety Deshaun Elliott suffered an MCL sprain in the game, leaving a hole in the secondary. Within hours, the team signed veteran Jabril Peppers, a versatile defender known for toughness and leadership. For fans in Pittsburgh, the move signaled determination. Management isn't waiting to plug gaps, it's pushing forward to keep momentum alive. Other franchises were also busy. The Green Bay Packers signed running back Pierre Strong Jr. to the practice squad, adding depth to a backfield that has struggled with injuries and inconsistency. Meanwhile, the New York Giants absorbed an early season setback when linebacker Micah McFadden was sidelined with a foot injury. His absence threatens to weaken a defense that already faces pressure in a competitive NFC East. These moves illustrate the constant chess match of roster management in a league where fortunes can shift in a single play. Baseball, meanwhile, is at its most thrilling stage. The Texas Rangers, fighting to stay alive in the wildcard race, scored a crucial 5-0 win over the Milwaukee Brewers. Michael Hellman emerged as the hero, launching a grand slam and adding an RBI double, while pitcher Jacob Latz threw 6 shutout innings. The Rangers' late-season push is igniting fans in Arlington, where hopes of an October run remain alive. Across the league, the playoff picture is tightening. The Chicago Cubs improved to 81-63, strengthening their postseason odds, while the Yankees and Red Sox are still clawing for survival in the American League wildcard hunt. September baseball has always carried a special intensity, and this year is no exception, with every pitch potentially shifting playoff destinies. Even the minor leagues are part of the drama. The Scranton Wilkes-Barre Railriders, the Tripola affiliate of the Yankees, are on the verge of clinching their league's second-half title. Their playoff chase reflects the importance of depth and development pipelines that fuel the big leagues. College football also added intrigue. Colorado head coach Deion Sanders announced a bold quarterback change, promoting third-stringer Ryan Staub to starter after his breakout performance in a 31-7 win over Delaware. Staub threw 2 touchdowns with poise, earning the confidence of his coach and teammates. The move underscores Sanders' willingness to reward results over reputation and keeps Colorado fans buzzing about a new era of possibility. What ties all these stories together is resilience and surprise. From Herbert's precision in Brazil to Hellman's heroics in Texas. From Pepper's fresh start in Pittsburgh to Staub's leap in Colorado. Sports this week embodied the unpredictability that keeps fans glued. The games remain not just entertainment but symbols of identity, pride, and community. For cities like Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles, the outcomes fuel debates in bars and living rooms. For universities and small towns, college football is a ritual that binds generations. At their best, sports provide a shared language in a divided time. They drive economies, inspire loyalty, and remind us that no matter how uncertain the world feels, there is still magic in the drama of competition. This week, that magic has been on full display.
Weather. Weather across the United States this week paints a vivid picture of contrasts, where different regions grapple with unique challenges, yet all are bound by the growing weight of climate extremes. From the dry heat of the West to the stormy Southeast, from crisp autumn mornings in the Midwest and Northeast to the unprecedented marine heat wave along the Pacific, conditions remind us that weather is both an everyday reality and a powerful driver of economic and social change. In the West, relentless heat continues to dominate. California, Nevada, and Arizona are experiencing temperatures well above seasonal norms, coupled with record-low soil moisture. These conditions have left landscapes parched, setting the stage for wildfires even though peak fire season has not yet arrived. Officials warn that shifting winds could quickly ignite flare-ups, forcing communities to activate evacuation plans that many hope to avoid this early. The memory of past Septembers, marked by devastating blazes, hangs over the region, fueling anxiety among residents. For agricultural workers and farmers, the risks are compounded by heat stress, which reduces productivity and raises operational costs. For families, the warnings translate into decisions about whether to keep children indoors and how to prepare for air quality advisories. Moving into the Midwest and Northeast, the rhythm is different. Cooler nights and crisp mornings mark the slow transition to autumn. Farmers welcome these conditions as ideal for harvesting corn and soybeans, with drier fields making machinery easier to operate. City dwellers, meanwhile, enjoy the relief from summer's humidity, filling parks and sidewalks in celebration of seasonal change. Yet the swings are not without challenges. Rapid drops in temperature can aggravate respiratory issues for vulnerable populations, prompting public health officials to issue advisories. Energy companies also face a delicate balancing act, shifting from summer cooling demand to winter heating demand, a transition that directly impacts millions of utility bills. In these regions, the weather is both a comfort and a subtle challenge, shaping daily life in ways most people barely notice until bills or health warnings arrive. The Southeast, by contrast, remains unsettled. Scattered thunderstorms dominate forecasts, fueled by lingering tropical moisture. While no major hurricanes are currently threatening the coast, meteorologists remind residents that September is the historical peak of Atlantic hurricane season. That means vigilance remains essential. Coastal towns from Florida to the Carolinas know too well how quickly a tropical depression can strengthen into a destructive storm. Even moderate flooding from heavy rainfall has the power to disrupt tourism, damage infrastructure, and strain local businesses. For communities dependent on seasonal visitors, every weather forecast is also an economic forecast. On the Pacific coast, an unusual and troubling phenomenon is unfolding. A marine heat wave has raised sea surface temperatures by up to 7 degrees above average, creating ripple effects for ecosystems and human communities alike. Warmer waters are fueling harmful algal blooms, stressing fish populations, and altering the migration patterns of marine mammals. The changes are also influencing local weather, producing muggy nights and unsettling air patterns. Fishermen, coastal businesses, and scientists all point to the anomaly as another sign that warming oceans are not distant predictions. They are here, reshaping livelihoods in real time. Taken together, these weather stories reveal the way climate and daily life are intertwined. Wildfire risk, harvest conditions, energy transitions, storm preparedness, and marine ecosystems all connect to health, safety, and economics. A spike in utility bills in New England, a canceled outdoor event in Atlanta, a struggling vineyard in California, or a disrupted fishing fleet in Oregon. Each of these stories begins with the weather. For Americans, forecasts are more than background chatter. They are plans for how to live, work, and spend. This week, they remind us that weather continues to be one of the most powerful forces shaping the nation's future.